Hello, denizens. Welcome to episode 134. Oh, no, it's not episode 134. It's 134 days until Halloween. Okay, now I want you to think hard and imagine yourself in the situation that scares you the most. A situation that forces you to face your worst fear. Could it be staying in an isolated cabin in the woods? Not knowing there is a madman lurking, waiting for his opportunity to put an axe through your face? No, not challenging enough? How about being lost in the woods, hearing eerie children sounds in the middle of the night? These examples may sound familiar to you for good reason, but how about being abducted by a crazed stalker and kept prisoner in your own apartment by a mind-controlled chip he surgically implanted into you, giving him total control when you sleep, when you're hungry, and every other aspect of your life for 13 years. With cameras set up so he can always monitor you, but even worse, the cameras being on an open cam feed where the whole world can watch you, but have no way of helping. This is a true story of a young woman who is facing that exact fear and living it as we speak. Having cameras on you 24/7 is not a new concept. Jennifer Ringley is known for it after doing it for 8 years, but she did it because she chose to. She could turn them off anytime. She could come and go at will. The young lady we're talking about today does not have that luxury, and yes, the cam feed is still active and has been for 13 years. In 2006, an unknown person posted a webcam link on the 4chan website. If you're familiar with 4chan, you shouldn't be surprised. When someone clicked on the link, they seen a young woman who appeared to be dead. There were notes hung on the walls explaining her situation, in hopes someone could figure out a way to help, and the room she was in was very cluttered. They watched for hours to see if the woman moved, and she did not, and the position she was in appeared to be very uncomfortable. The name she refers to herself as is Chip Chan. All the notes are written in Chinese, and she is located somewhere in South Korea. She is unaware what part. As the person who first clicked the link went back and posted his discovery on 4chan, he wrote that the webcam link is of a dead woman, and other users began clicking to see what was going on. They began focusing on the trash and trying to translate what the many notes read when the woman jumped up, quickly moved behind a handmade sign, and peering at the camera as if she knew people were watching. This webcam feed is still active, making it 13 straight years and counting. Over those 13 years, she has been able to relay little information. She is in South Korea, but does not know her location other than that. She very rarely leaves the house, and when she does, she must wear a disguise. As observed by people who have watched the cam, she sleeps 12 hours a day or more, and many times she sleeps inside of a filing cabinet. During the time she is awake, she spends it sitting at a computer. This is the information that has been figured out by translations. She was abducted 16 years ago and held captive ever since. She refers to her captive only as P, the letter P. Her captive P is a corrupt cop in an area where most are corrupt. Every now and then all 3 camera feeds will go off, but only for a few minutes at a time. Occasionally, they will go off for 2 to 3 hours. She says that P disables the camera feeds and makes her sleep, and he comes to visit, reactivating the camera feeds once he leaves. She says she has no clue what happens when he visits and is terrified to sleep. The messages that were able to be translated are both confusing and creepy. Here are a few, but keep in mind that these translations could be off or only partial. Don't get tricked, don't get fooled. Early in the morning. If someone comes that paralyzes the person, I can't be stopped. Then it gets more eerie with these quotes. The stalker uses this skill since 2006. I have slept for 20 hours every day since then. I do not know what have happened while I sleep. I have been always afraid of sleeping, and Stalker P breaks in after disabled camera. But there's more. Korean Cop P makes me lose consciousness at any time. I always sleep on the chair for years. I haven't dreamed for years because I lose consciousness. The young woman has communicated that her parents are deceased and left a large inheritance to her that her captor now controls by keeping her prisoner and controlling her mind. The lights in the house have been seen turning on and off while she is asleep. If you go to victimsedge.com in Draven's horror blog, you'll see the story of Chip Chan, with screenshots and more information on exploring this eerie story more on your own. Okay, before we get into this next story, let me tell you about something. If you're into horror, paranormal, skulls, or the occult, which I hope you are if you're listening to this show, you'll love the designs I've been adding to the dark art store and the new store we started on Zazzle. These designs are available on wall art, mugs, pillows, many more options, including t-shirts of course, to create that dark atmosphere that I know you will love. Both stores can be accessed at www.victimsedge.com. On episode 1 we told you about the elevator ritual. A ritual originated out of South Korea many years ago. Tonight I'm going to tell you a true story about the elevator ritual gone bad in the most horrific way, and of someone who found out about the story and regrets ever trying it. I suspect that many of you are familiar with the story of Alyssa Lamb, a young college student visiting from Canada who stayed at the Stanley Hotel in Los Angeles. For those of you who haven't, I will briefly explain. Alyssa stayed at the Stanley Hotel for a weekend getaway with friends. A hotel surveillance video captured her acting erratically at an elevator. Those familiar with the elevator ritual recognized her actions and realized that she was in fact performing the elevator ritual. She was seen pressing buttons repeatedly, peeping out the door, and appeared to be talking with someone even though she was in the elevator alone. Alyssa was found dead that same night in a water tank on the hotel's roof. As no answers or explanation have been ever found, law enforcement ruled her death as an accidental drowning. As a result of Alyssa Lamb's story, a young lady I will refer to as Anne, as she requested. Anne seen the story and developed a growing interest. Anne was a skeptic, but always was fascinated by stories of urban legends, and the combination of Alyssa Lamb's story and the fact that it happened at the Stanley Hotel was too much to resist. Anne's adventure into the unknown did not have the debunking results that she hoped for. Here's her story in her words. I have always been fascinated in unexplained topics. I'm a writer, and I write horror stories, so I'm always looking for things online related. I studied Chinese in college, so I can find some wild sites that are written in Chinese. One site had a post explaining a ritual. It was called the elevator ritual. I thought, oh cool, another urban legend. Then I noticed that there were comments in the thousands. I read through many of the comments, and what I found were some non-believers, some saying they tried it and it worked, and many more warning people to not do it, also demanding the post be removed. Now that naturally made my curiosity peak, so I wrote down the steps to take in case the post did get removed and began my search for a building with 10 floors. I found several, but the realization of the fact that there was no way I could do it because there's too many people getting on and off the elevators, and the building doors were locked once the businesses inside closed. So I was talking to a friend on the phone one day and told her about the elevator ritual that I had found. She said her husband works part-time on weekends as a security guard, in the building he works in happens to have 10 floors. He works the midnight shift, so there's no way anyone could wander in to use the elevator. We planned it out, and I agreed to text him and come to the building at 1 a.m. on the following Friday. When the time arrived, I went to meet him and he let me in, locking the doors behind us. He went on with his duties in the building, but told me he would not need to use the elevator until 3:30 a.m. That gave me well over an hour to debunk this thing, and I figured it would only take 10 to 15 minutes anyway. I took out the paper that I wrote the steps down on and read through it. Now, just being in an empty building at 1 a.m. with most of the lights out, other than the lobby, did begin to give me a creepy feeling, but I was able to brush it off. I won't go through all the button pressing now. You either know about it, or if not, you really don't want to. Everything went fine, and I was wondering to myself why I stayed up so late to ride a boring elevator for 10 minutes. So I realized I'm finally on step 8, and realized that I'm almost finished when I pressed the button for the 5th floor. I had written the steps down exactly right, but I neglected to write down, and completely forgot, about the many people reporting that sometimes a woman will enter the elevator at this point, and you should not look or speak to her. When the elevator doors opened at the 5th floor, I was completely caught off guard as a young woman stepped inside the elevator with me. My heart dropped. I immediately hit the button for the 1st floor and looked down at the floor of the elevator, trying to tell myself that this was a wild coincidence. But I could not shake the thought of knowing that no one else is supposed to be in the building, and the fact that I looked directly at her when the doors opened. She was a pretty petite woman who looked to be in her mid-20s, so that made me feel less nervous, but I was not about to speak to her. As the elevator began going down, the woman began to speak to me. She said there was someone hurt on the floor she just got off of, asking me if I would go back and help her. I knew that this did not make sense. Mark told me no one was in the building other than him and myself, so not only does the woman in the elevator with me not make sense, but someone being hurt on the 5th floor made even less sense. Realizing this, I did begin to get a nervous feeling going through me. I kept my eyes locked on the floor and refused to say anything to her. She repeated herself again, now in an angry sounding tone, but I was committed to ignoring her, but my heart was beating faster. Now my emotions were all over the place, from scared to sad to angry. She now started cursing at me and yelling, her voice not even sounding like the previous one. I began feeling terrified and helpless, as going from floor 5 to floor 1 should have only taken a moment, and it felt like we were moving, but not going down or up. This next part seemed like an out-of-body experience for me. Suddenly she stopped yelling at me and began crying. She was crying so hard and in such a weird pitch. I began feeling outraged at her. My anger grew so strong, I just wanted to shut her up. Then I turned, looked at her, grabbed her hair, and slammed her face into the elevator wall 2 times before I snapped out of it. And I stopped. What am I doing? I'm assaulting someone on an elevator when I realized her cries have stopped and turned into laughter. I thought, what the hell? I'm not a violent person. I haven't been in a fight since kindergarten. I backed up, knowing this is far from a coincidence, as the elevator finally reached floor number 1. I was about to run, but she beat me to it, as she continued laughing and just stepped out of the elevator and blocked it. I thought to myself, okay, when these doors close, I will call my friend's husband, who is in the building, but before I could even form my thoughts, the elevator doors closed, and the elevator began going up really fast. I can't even describe what was going through my mind at that point. I can only describe it as pure terror. In a panic, I began hitting the stop button and every other button, but they seemed to be dead, and just like that, the elevator stopped at the 10th floor. My heart dropped into my stomach as the doors slowly opened. But once they did, instant relief. As the doors opened, I seen everything was normal. Offices on each side of the hall with people working, people walking and talking to each other. Okay, I thought to myself, I must have fallen asleep on the elevator and had a nightmare. That's the only logical thought I could come up with. I hit the button for the 1st floor. feeling relieved and happy that I debunked this. When I got from the elevator on the first floor, everything was also normal. I called a taxi, and on my ride home, the realization hit me. It is 11 a.m. I know what I did only would have taken me 20 to 30 minutes tops, but it's 11 a.m. and 10 hours have passed. Did I really fall asleep for 10 hours on an elevator? I arrived home in a daze of confusion, but happy that the ordeal was over. I was fully refreshed, as if I had a very good night's sleep, even though I don't remember sleeping, and I did have my doubts. I went through my day as usual, even had lunch with my friend and her husband, who asked me how my elevator adventure went. I told them it was fun, but that's all I said about it. I didn't mention my dream to anyone. Later that night, after watching a movie and my friends went home, I took a shower and got ready for bed, feeling much better now that I was convinced it was nothing but a dream. It did stay on my mind that my friends asked me about my adventure, but I figured the scary parts and the time loss were a dream at least. I went to bed after my shower and grabbed a book to read to get the experience off of my mind, and read until I fell asleep. As soon as I fell into a deep sleep, my eyes opened, and I found myself in the same building I did the elevator ritual in. I panicked for a moment, but then realized, okay, this is another dream, and felt relieved. I was in a hallway, offices on both sides, but there appeared to be no one in them. I looked around and seen a window and walked to it to look outside. Everything looked normal. It was sunny out, and the town looked normal, all except for there were no people. I seen no people inside or outside on the streets, not even vehicles. Also, even though you could tell it was sunny out and even see the sun in the sky, something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it, as if there was a filter like the ones in photo apps that made everything seem dull and lifeless. I slowly began stepping away from the window, letting all of this sink in, when I realized there was no sound either, not even of my own footsteps. Looking up the hallway, I spotted the elevator and began walking towards it in a rush. Again, telling myself that this was a dream, but wondering why I am feeling it when I pinch myself. I reached the elevator and seeing that I was on floor number 10. I hit the button for the first floor and waited, but nothing happened. Now, my heart was starting to beat faster and I was starting to panic. I kept hitting the button until finally I heard the elevator moving. As the doors opened, I got in and had to continuously hit the button for floor number 1 before the elevator started moving again. Finally it worked and carried me down to the first floor, where I woke up as soon as I stepped out of the elevator. I woke up in my own bed and felt so relieved. This was without a doubt a dream. Here's the part that everyone needs to know. It has been 2 weeks today since I tried the elevator ritual, and every single night when I go to sleep I have that same reoccurring dream. But each night, for the first 4 or 5 nights, it was harder and slower to get back to the elevator, and then harder and slower to get it to work, until day 6 the elevator was boarded up. Boards were blocking the elevator and I could not get in. I had to start taking the stairs. This is 10 flights of stairs from the 10th floor down. But one night it seemed to take much longer. Each night after, it took longer and longer to get to the bottom of the stairs. Finally, I began counting the stairs in my dream. In my mind, no matter how hard I tried, I always lost count when I reached floor number 5. I do have my cell phone in my dream though, so I began timing myself going down the stairs. From the first night, it took 7 minutes. Gradually took longer and longer each night, all the way up until last night when it took me 42 minutes to walk down the same amount of stairs. Each night there are more and more obstacles on the stairs also. It started with a mop bucket, then each night more and more things that I need to walk around or step over. I am afraid to go to sleep at night. I get more and more tired as I descend the stairs every night, and soon, if it continues, I won't be able to make it. This dream I cannot wake myself up from, and I feel everything the same as if I were awake. I have accepted the fact that the dream is not a dream. It is the other dimension that I am trapped going back to every time I sleep, and soon will not be able to escape from. Though I avoid sleep as long as I can, I know that I will eventually be stuck there for good. I feel it. If you're thinking about trying the elevator ritual, please don't. Alright, so that's Anne's experience with the ritual. Can you consider that a successful or unsuccessful adventure? I guess that's up to her. Everyone I've spoke to who have tried the ritual and had a bad experience are ones who screwed it up. In Anne's case, she not only looked at the woman who entered on the fifth floor, she looked at her, she spoke to her, and she freaking assaulted her. That is fuck up level infinity. I began adding a directory to our website. I want to list all of the best in horror and true crime. So if you work on a podcast, a website, or any other service that focuses on the horror community, please shoot me a message so I can get you on there. All contact info is on www.victimsedge.com. It's VICTIMSEDGE. Or you can message me on Twitter or Facebook. This is free, my part in supporting the growing horror community out there. Without horror, there's nothing. If you're a fan of horror, please visit us also. You'll find everything to quench your thirst for horror, and please consider helping to support us on Patreon, PayPal, or by checking out the horror and occult-related items in our stores located at the website. Until next week, talk to you again, as long as you don't get lost on an elevator.